The slate is so official. Okay.
Not clapping in the air?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Asked and Answered. Done.
The only financial news show on YouTube.
Financial advice show.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Let's talk news. Let's break some financial news.
God, that's breaking news. No, the only financial advice show where it's not a deathly unappealing man yelling at you for being stupid.
And where we won't plug crypto every 30 seconds.
Crypto and, like, I don't know, reverse mortgages and whatever other shit
50-year term, let's go.
Coaching pyramid schemes. Yeah, people are always asking what I think about, like, insert horrendous personal finance man here. I'm like, first of all, crazy of you to think that I'm consuming a man's content. Please, except for my beloved Prof G. My problematic king.
I feel like he kind of pivoted into personal finance more.
He did.
Yeah.
Listen, as we all know, one thing about Scott Galloway is he has a perfect one-to-one ratio of amazing to insane opinions. But yep. I actually think that most of his economic takes, both macro and micro, are pretty good.
Yeah, I don't have much beef.
He's got to stop blathering on about the male loneliness crisis, though. Why is it our problem?
Because we have to teach them how to make friends.
That's
Lead by example.
That's like rarely his message. I actually saw an interview with him recently where the person like held him to account and was like, your solution to like the male loneliness crisis is for like men to like make a lot more money. And he's like, yeah, well, that's like what worked for me. So I guess I have to interrogate that. Like, and to his credit, he was like, yeah, I don't like the way this criticism is sitting with me. So that means there's probably some truth to it. A reflective king. Very few men would be capable.
Good.
Take good. But yeah, other than that, we don't, any other financial advice or whatever show that's just like someone berating a barista for being in credit card debt or whatever. Like that's not me. But before we get into today's episode of Asked and Answered, I just wanted to quickly give a shout out to Monarch, which is not only the budgeting app that I use every day and found independently after I learned that Mint was going to be shedding off its mortal coil and leaving this world, and I was desperate to find a good Mint replacement. I actually found it by Googling Mint replacement and ended up using it and loving it, and it turns out it is like the number one Mint replacement as voted by users, and it's just all around an absolutely wonderful budgeting app. If you're someone who is looking to get kind of a hold on your money on a day-to-day basis, it is absolutely perfect for that. You can do things like obviously track your net worth. You can share your expenses with other people that you maybe live with or share expenses with otherwise. It's great for day-to-day budgeting, looking back at your purchases, doing long-term goals and planning, and just generally feeling like you have a handle on your money. I literally check my Monarch app compulsively at this point. I check it like 20 times a day because I'm working toward a money goal and it soothes me to look at it. But anyway, they are truly an awesome company. They don't sell any of your data to third parties, which is like pretty rare in this space. And just like the user experience is awesome. It's easy enough for me to use and understand at a glance, which is saying a lot because I'm pretty bad with technology. So anyway, check out Monarch. Please use our link if you want to try it out. And if you use our link, you also get 50% off your first year, which is a pretty good deal. And I'm out here paying full price like a sucker. I got to re-up on that deal. But anyway, today we're here to answer more of your questions. And specifically this week we are talking about money and emotion, a noxious brew.
It's everything about money is money and emotion, if we're being honest.
I agree. Also, Holly, I know you're going to be giving initial notes on this. You better keep my Prof G digression in. This is a Prof G Stan account.
We've kept it so tight at the top here, we can keep it in.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, how are you?
We didn't have any pleasantries. Hello, how are you today?
How are you?
I am well. This is a learning English podcast now.
No kidding. Well, you had a weekend with your in-laws. That's exciting.
I did. I'm finally feeling healthy. My new year hasn't started until middle of January. So I had a soft launch because I was on death's door and then couldn't get any work done.
We famously had to reschedule this.
Everything. And now I'm like, oh, hey, it's the new year. Did everyone else know that? And it's like, we've already given up on the new year. Have you seen what's going on?
Yeah, we don't say Happy New Year anymore.
I think you get 3 days. That's what I've decided. On January 4th, we don't say it anymore.
You know what I'm celebrating is the Persian calendar, the Ottoman calendar? What's the calendar but what are the ones that start on the spring equinox? That's when the year starts. Because to me, that's when the year starts. Can someone Google this? What calendar starts on the...
My only familiarity with the Persian New Year is Real Housewives of Orange County. Emily hosted a Persian New Year party. That's the extent of my knowledge. So when do they film?
Oh, right, because Shayna's Persian and Mormon.
No, because her mother-in-law, Shane. Yeah, that's right. You
her
said
husband,
Shane. I
Shane.
thought you said Shayna. I'm like, who the hell's Shayna?
Shane is Persian and Mormon.
Yeah, an interesting
a wild
combo. Not what you expected.
Are you watching the Valley Persian style?
Not yet. I never watched Shaws of Sunset.
What?
I watched like 4 episodes when I was pumping. And I was like, oh, this is good. And then I kind of dropped off.
We have to do a whole Bravo episode at some point because we did get some Bravo related questions.
Let's go.
But yeah, I think I'm going to lock into the Valley Persian style because I enjoy the Valley so much more than I do any of the Housewives shows.
The Valley is very well
top tier television. And I just feel like and part of the reason it's so much more compelling to me is because money is so front and center on that show. And there's very little pretense about it.
They are talking about it.
Jesse spent all of him and Michelle's money.
Yeah.
I believe
Brittany is the breadwinner, has been for
paying
most of
off
their
Jax's $1.2 million tax debt.
I can't.
I
can't. She should have never legally married him. Just have a big fun wedding.
It should have been the Gretchen and Slade scenario where
absolutely.
She's never going to be on the hook for his back child support.
That's
for his
a woman who knows what she's doing.
For better or worse.
In that case. Okay. Yeah, let's just be clear.
Not sartorially.
No. Only with Slade.
Only with Slade. Okay, well, Money and Emotion, as you can see, we're already... What calendar starts on...
No one can find it.
Because we have... China's the Lunar New Year.
Yeah, lunar.
That starts in, like, February.
It depends. It changes. But usually, like, February, March.
Okay.
Usually.
The Georgian calendar? The Gregorian? You mean the Gregorian. Gregorian.
Well,
like
let's do some chanting.
Ew. Do you remember like back in the 90s when it was like popular to have like house music with Gregorian chants over it?
I mean, honestly, it hits. It still does.
Pure
Especially
moods.
If you grew up in certain religions, you're still like, oh, a sound that is so familiar.
The Catholic has logged on.
Yeah, very much. The Gregorian, no.
Not to lore drop.
The Gregorian chanting, though, is very,
Listen,
I love it.
One thing you can't say about Catholicism is that it doesn't have riz.
Oh, are you kidding me? Why do you think we're all theater kids?
Yes.
I feel like 80% of kids who are theater kids and were raised, like there's a strong Catholicism theater overlap. It's all performance and music.
100%. Couldn't agree more. So our first question. How to reconcile the need to start making investments with the constant fear that something will come along and take your money. I grew up poor and have some unhealthy money attitudes for sure. My parents had no financial literacy, and as an adult at the ripe age of 26, I have finally landed a safe and stable job and have a stable paycheck. I have been building up savings slowly but surely. I'm also paying off debt each month, so that's a big chunk of my paycheck. And I want to start investing a portion of my savings, but the fear is that something that will require money is always there.
There is no simple solve to scarcity mentality, which is fundamentally what that is, if I were to armchair expert analyze. To feel like there's always the other shoe's going to drop, a wolf is at the door, whatever cliche you want to use. I think you have to figure out for yourself what sum of money and cash makes you feel safe. So is it the 6 months emergency savings fund rhetoric? Is it a year's worth of your salary? Like, what makes you feel okay? And that can be goal 1, is to amass that in cash and savings in a high yield savings account. Then focus on additional investing with a big asterisk here of please contribute to your retirement plan along the way. So especially she said stable job, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that you have good benefits and you have access to an employer 401k and have a match or something similar, 403b, TDA, et cetera, et cetera. Please be putting money into that. If you have a 4% match, put 4% in. But if that doesn't make you feel good right away, start at 1%. And then I would challenge you every 6 months to increase it by 1% until you slowly work your way towards however much money you want to have saved. I like the incremental process because then it doesn't go from, oh, I'm supposed to be investing 10% and that doesn't feel good to me. Instead, I'm going to do 2%, then in 6 months, 3%, then in 6 months, 4%, and you barely notice the difference in your paycheck.
I agree with all of this.
And financial therapy, to be honest.
I think it's also important to regularly do those sort of like calculations where you see how much you're missing out on by not investing.
Yes.
Or any other sort of major wealth building action, because I think it's so easy to get caught in that sort of like false sort of paradigm of like, I have it and that's, that's enough or like that's saving it. And it's like, well, you're really technically losing a lot of money based on what you could be making. So I think trying to make that as concrete as possible is like, here's what I'm missing out on every year because like the market's up like 15% this year.
It's so much this year.
I know. And whatever, I'm not going to get into our allocation, but either way, like point being, and obviously some years are like that, some years are not, but I do think it's important to like really try to make that as concrete as possible to sort of train your brain away from the idea that the safest bet is always the best bet.
Or that cash is just a safe bet. I think that's the other, I don't want to say fallacy, because you should have money in cash. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you also don't want to over-index on that either.
No, also like the dollar is like pretty volatile right now. Like we can't, and it's, I just think that we have to remind ourselves that like we often confuse like stability with the smartest possible decision or the safest possible decision. And I think that that is something that comes from a place of scarcity, right? Because like when you have nothing, like a couple $100 in your hand is probably the best that you can do, or the smartest thing that you can do. And you can't afford to be taking any risk. But at some point, not taking any risk comes at a much larger opportunity cost. And it isn't necessarily the safest bet if what you want to do is be able to retire. Because I think another thing that you need to sort of concretize for yourself is how much retirement actually costs if you want to have anything resembling a chill life in retirement.
Yeah, $1 million is not it. And we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
I would also say for the people who are like, well, what does it mean to actually contextualize this for myself? Use a compound interest calculator. Google it. There are so many. I like the investor.gov one, but so many versions exist online. And just go in and put, let's say you're starting, you could start at zero and say, I'm going to put in $100 a month for 30 years. And I would say if you want to be a little bit more conservative, when they ask you the average yield, the average rate, I'd say go 6%. That's on the more conservative side of average. So that means that over the course of your 30 years investing that you averaged out at 6%, and then see how much money you would have, and then play around with your contribution number. So, all right, I just said $100 a month. What if I did $500 a month? How much is that going to yield? Really seeing what compound interest does is such a mind bender for a lot of folks who are just getting started in their investing journey, and seeing how much the small incremental amounts add up. And I personally find it really motivating to be like, well, can I do $50 more? Can I do $50 more? Because that adds up so much over decades.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. But like you said, ultimately this is an emotional question, and scarcity mindset is a very hard thing to break out of. It's just important to consistently remind yourself that being scarce is not often the safest or smartest bet. It just feels the best in terms of your like cortisol level.
Yeah, which is why I think you decide on a number that's your safety number so that you can kind of pacify that side of it. Because I'll be honest, I think with few exceptions, scarcity mentality is only controlled. It is not gotten over. I think most people that will live inside of them for the rest of their lives to some degree.
How do you deal with the guilt of doing temporarily well financially when the world is not? I have something to say on this.
Yeah, please.
Guilt is an extremely self-indulgent emotion. It is.
You're not
Either
wrong.
do something about it or don't. Listen, we all know how much I love Countess Luann. And one reason I love her is because she kicked off that show by saying, I never feel guilty about being privileged. And you know what? She's right. Because to me, performative guilt while still keeping all of the privilege, it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you feel bad about how much money you have compared to how much money the world has, give it away. That is always available to you. Give away your money, give away your time, give away your resources, your skills, anything. Like there are always ways to offset that. But if you don't want to do that, fine. But accept that you don't want to do that. And then just understand that like guilt, I feel like, especially like, I think it's easier to kind of contextualize or to conceptualize when we think about it in terms of like interpersonal guilt, right? Like feeling guilty about what you did toward another person does nothing to benefit them. The most you can do is take accountability, apologize, and commit to never, making the same mistake or taking the same action. Other than that, though, like you constantly beating yourself up benefits no one. And it does feel very performative and honestly, very Catholic. And we're not here to like, I don't know. I just think that there's a reason why so many like major religions are so guilt centric, because I feel like it's not only is it just like a way to constantly be punishing yourself, it's also a way to constantly be punishing yourself that has like absolutely no benefit to anyone else. And so it's this constant self-perpetuating cycle.
And it's control. It's a good way to control people.
It's a huge tool of control.
Yeah.
But I honestly, like, I've been trying to reckon a lot with like why people hate the left so much. Not all, but like why a certain contingent has such strong feelings about it. And I do think there's a lot of truth to that whole concept of like liberal guilt, which often feels so performative and so condescending in a way. And I really do think that like, and this is something I think a lot about in the context of politics, like 1 hour of you actually doing something tangible is worth 100 hours of you like reading news and feeling bad.
And spiraling, yeah. Mark Maron has a great line, to paraphrase. It's like, we annoyed the average American into fascism.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm loath to give it to Mark Maron, but I'll give him that one.
It's a good line.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously there's a lot of complexity to that, but I do think concretely, like, no one cares that you feel guilty about whatever unearned privilege that you have, or even in the case of money you may have earned.
Because that's what I was going to say, you know. Sometimes it's unearned, but sometimes you worked hard and you caught breaks and things cut your way. And you're right to that it's a fairly useless emotion most of the time, and that you can always do something about it.
This is why, of all the criticisms people levy against Trump, one that I never understand is like they think it's so tacky that he lives in like a solid gold apartment. And I'm like, actually, I think that's the coolest thing about him, and that all billionaires should be forced, real or fake billionaires, should be forced to live in gold apartments and like wear gold suits. Because what I'm saying is like, why are you as a billionaire trying to be fake humble and wearing like a promotional t-shirt and a baseball cap?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Gauche.
Like like yeah. You should be identifiable. Like you should have to own
the Gilded
it.
Age.
Well, yeah, because it's
yes.
like you want to be able, like, I have such beef with Seattle because you walk around that city and like you'll be in like a hotel or like a restaurant and you're like, wow, I'm seated between 3 billionaires and they all look like shit. Do you know what I mean? Like yes. They should have to identify themselves.
Well, because they're internally frantic about the class warfare coming and that they need to engage in stealth wealth so that we don't know that they're wealthy.
But it's like, if you want to be,
that's why they're doing
no,
it.
I know. But it's like, but if you want to be like t-shirt bro so bad, then give that fucking money away. Do you know what I mean?
But also, how many of their t-shirts cost $2,000?
Even worse. That's gaslighting. That's a form of gaslighting. It is. I don't want to see your fucking Loro Piana shirt.
I don't want your brandless ball cap. Give me a slogan. Put a college on there.
It should have your net worth on it.
Yeah. Just a calculator, or not a calculator, a clock looking thing that's just like constantly updating with how much you're worth.
1,000%. It's like, I want to, like, you should either have, if you feel guilty about it, or if you feel ashamed or embarrassed, or you know intrinsically that something's wrong, then do something about it. The rest is performance or self-soothing. Or
interrogate why you think you should feel guilty. Like, do you really feel guilty, or do you think that you're supposed to feel guilty?
Or do you think that other people think that?
It can be heartbreaking to see certain images in the news online. Like, you're allowed to look at something and feel terrible that is happening to another human, and to feel a level of empathy that doesn't have to also correlate to you feeling guilty about the life that you have. Like, empathy and guilt do not have to be, no?
Finish your thought.
Well, I just don't feel like empathy and guilt have to be completely merged.
This is going to be the most Ezra Klein coded thing I've ever said.
No.
But here's the thing. One thing that I think that the Obama libs spill about is like, our brains were not meant to handle this.
No.
Like, for all of our modern moments' flaws, and I'm not going to say there aren't many, like, the average human being on this planet is like fathoms and fathoms better off than they were 100 years ago. Like, that's kind of undeniable. Like, pick a metric, undeniable. Even if you want to limit it down to as many, like, as narrow a window as you possibly can, like me as like a white upper middle class woman in the United States, like, undeniably way better off now than I was even 1 or 2 generations ago, right? Like, even something as basic as like, I can have a credit card, I can buy a house, like, whatever. Like, I mean, we're really touch and go on some of these rights, but like overall on aggregate, like, probably better off. when you think about, and that extends, and that's amongst one of the most privileged classes of society that has historically been so privileged. You expand that out to almost name a group, name a country, name a whatever situation, like the drop off of how much worse life was for people even a very, very, very short time ago is like orders of magnitude. Like we can't even fathom it. Like even average life expectancy has like exploded globally in the past just couple decades. The difference was, I mean, aside from the fact that like the mentality was just completely different about like people like who had privilege did not give a shit at a level I think that we also can't comprehend, and felt, if anything, totally entitled to make people's lives worse in the interest of benefiting themselves, quite explicitly. Like even if you read like historical texts from like literally under 100 years ago, like the way people looked at the world was just so radically less empathetic. Like it just didn't even function in the same way. When you look at that, one of the major differences aside from that is the fact that they weren't seeing these things. They weren't exposed to them in the way that we are now. Like you would maybe read news, you would maybe hear of something, but the amount of news that actually reached the average person was extremely limited. Most of their day-to-day experiences were just the people around them. Most people never left their town. Like we just aren't used to seeing this at the scale that we see it.
I don't mean this in like a condescending, I'm in my mid-30s way, but I'm curious. No, I'm genuinely curious how many people who are watching this know that the news or the like news used to turn off. It would sign off after
used to turn off.
Well, not just the internet, but like when we're talking about a generation or two generations back, like when our parents were kids, after the 11 p.m. news, it went to bed. Like there was a sign off, and then nothing would be on your television.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that you certainly didn't have 24/7 news, and you just got mostly local with a little bit of national, maybe a little international coverage, and then it went to bed, and you weren't constantly inundated with all of this information and all of these images constantly, and some of which you don't have any control over what you're getting fed in some cases.
And you know it pains me on every cellular level to give any credit to the Ezra Kleins and Derek Thompsons of the world, but I do think that there is some, at minimum, psychological benefit to trying to hold in our minds that things can still be bad and things can still be very much worth improving in a meaningful way. And still, when we look at the general arc of progress over the last, let's say, 200 years, there's been a lot of wins. And again, I think what is happening on a sort of individual level and on a macro level is that our ability to empathize, to see problems, to understand them, to feel implicated by them, et cetera, is expanding at sort of like an explosive rate, right? But our ability to solve for them, our ability to like make time for them, our ability to allocate ourselves to them, we only have the same 24 hours a day that we did in like medieval times. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so to be aware of like, for example, if you were to say to like the average medieval peasant, like, here's a 24-hour a day update on like what's happening in like, I don't know, between like the Mongol Empire and do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like
they'd be like, first of all, I don't care.
They'd be like, what? Who's that?
I don't have time to look. Yeah.
Who is that? And again, it is not to say that this radical increase in the amount of information that we have access to or our ability to empathize with it and have higher standards for it are not good things. They clearly are. That being said, it's also important to understand that like you only have a finite amount of resources on every level, and it is your responsibility to allocate them in the most productive and sustainable way, which can wax and wane over time. But guilt and all of the kind of offshoot feelings and actions that guilt tends to produce does nothing but waste our time, remove our ability to act meaningfully, and also do nothing to solve the problem. Also, like, there's so much good data about, like, just, like, literally volunteering does so much for your mental health on every level. Like, stay local for a bit. If you feel really that overwhelmed, my best advice is, like, stay local in your action for at least a couple months, because you'd be shocked at how much it, like, changes your mentality. And it also gives you something that we're missing all the time, which is a sense of scale and ability to impact things individually.
And human connection.
Well, listen. You know that I don't have to be dragged into a conversation about how much we're all okay with not having any human connection.
But I would say like that to me is a huge additional benefit of volunteering right now, particularly if you're doing it in person, no matter the kind, as you're then having.
Can I tell you about this thing Mark and I did for Christmas Eve?
You told me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell the audience. It was the most pure activity. We went to this. We did not know what it would be. We thought it was volunteering with adults for a Christmas banquet. It's for like asylum seekers. And we didn't realize that it was all of their children. So it was like 200 children, mostly from like Afghanistan and a couple other places, some Central American countries. And our job, I don't know how we managed to get tasked with this job. It was just, our group showed up at the right time, but our job was to give out presents to these kids, like just to hand out presents to them. And it was like a big Christmas party that they were all having. And it was so cute because they got so many gift donations that we had the ability to like give them each a second gift. And the guy who was running, I'll link the charity below. It's a really great organization. It's a food pantry that does this. But the guy was like telling the little kids, he was like, now you guys, like this is a real blessing that we're getting 2 gifts. But if you have like a brother or sister or a friend who's not getting a gift, like maybe you want to think about giving it to them. And so many of the kids, as they were getting their second gift, tried to give it to someone else.
Right? It's so sweet.
It's so sweet.
I'll also plug for people who feel like they don't have time to consistently do something. One, there are lots of one-off opportunities.
True.
Or if you feel like, oh, well, in my area, we don't have the infrastructure to have a lot of organizations. I can only donate money. If you have people in your area where you live who are unhoused or otherwise need support, you can just create your own care packages. That's one thing that we always do. I would say warm socks, hand warmers, Vaseline, cash, make some food, date it, say what it is, but create these little care packages that you can just go out and distribute. And it's something that you can do on whatever time you have, whenever you have the time in your area. And it makes a direct difference with one other person. And it's just, it can be that simple too.
Totally.
Or just looking someone in the eyes and saying, hi, what's your name? Just having, like, giving someone dignity.
DV shelters also always need care package type stuff. You can usually look at their website and they'll have a list of things that they need.
Yep.
That's a big one to give to if you don't feel like, because they're in every city basically. But New York has so many opportunities in particular. Get out there.
Especially this time of year, because we're post-holidays.
Yeah.
All of the charitable goodwill has like died out and everybody's cranky. And it's a really good thing to do. This
is what I'm going to say, though, for New York City, is that there are certain charities that are like, they're good. Like, you don't need to be given to the Met. You don't need to be given to the Central Park Conservancy. Like those. There are certain, I have a friend, I'm going to take that back because I'm sure there are things you could be doing, but like, I have a friend who's like very, very, very plugged into the like sort of like nonprofit world in New York as kind of a means to like advance her business. I mean, she also cares about it, but that is like, talk about an underrated networking opportunity, is getting plugged into those spheres, because then you meet tons of people who have money to throw around. But it is crazy when you look at like the big hitters in New York, like how much money, resource, galas, like everything gets thrown at them. And then like 3 blocks up the street, you have a park that like can't even like keep the grass cut. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like also trying to dedicate your resources where it's not like constantly getting resources thrown at it.
Yep. And using sites like Charity Navigator and GuideStar to vet them.
Yep. Yeah. Any tips for handling financial anxiety during crazy political or economic times? Do you even suffer from anxiety? You seem...
Me? Oh, yeah.
Do you really? You seem like such a not anxious person to me.
I have some that are hyper specific. It's funny you say that though, because in pregnancy and postpartum got really anxious in a way that was more generalized anxiety that I had never experienced before. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is what people are talking about? This is terrible. Now I understand why everybody talks about this all the time. So no, not generalized in that way, but I have a few things that are very hyper specific we can talk about offline. But I don't even like talking about them.
Oh my gosh.
Putting them in the world.
Oh my gosh.
I do like to read back on how we survived terrible things in the past. And I have brought this up before, specifically about the stock market. I feel like a lot of people get anxiety around what if it all crashes? What if the depression happens again, et cetera, et cetera. And looking back and understanding and reading the history of how the market worked, how we recovered, what that looked like, and then understanding within all of that context how you can inoculate your own personal finances to the best of your ability. So having an emergency savings fund, having diversified streams of income, looking at what insurance coverage looks like for you. If you and your spouse, if you're married, both work in the same industry, how secure are both of your jobs? Do you have the money to cover having to buy insurance on the open market? Like, if over-examining and over-analyzing makes you feel better, have at it. But I think for the most part, just stop consuming the content that's making you feel this way. To be honest, like when it comes to the financial news, I want you to be an informed person, but at the same time, to tie back to what we were just talking about, we're getting too much information all the time about too many things that are complicated, that are hard to understand, that you're getting like one TikTok or one reel that just gets you spiraled and explains in 90 seconds at most, a very complicated topic that they can skew in a way that makes you feel panicked because it's good to keep you engaged. That's not helpful.
No, and it's like we have enough actual problems. Stop anticipating or potentially even inventing problems, which I feel like is what a lot of anxiety is. It's like they say like anxiety is like living in a perpetual future, right? Because you're like, it's all about like, what is the worst outcome, and it's catastrophizing. And this is something that I've always dealt with ever since I'm a little kid. One thing about anxiety, if it's like generalized, is that it's a moving target, right? Like it's almost like your brain, at least my brain, like really kind of seeks the level of like, it will be stressed. And if one thing is not stressing you out, another thing will start to stress you out. And it's almost like you have more like bandwidth that now opens up to stress about this other thing that doesn't matter. And I have personally found that one of the only things that is a meaningful antidote to anxiety is simply exhausting yourself physically. Like if you are not getting enough exercise on a day-to-day basis, enough movement, enough like distraction, and physical tiredness, you like bedtime is horrible because your brain is just like, ooh, we got nothing but time, baby. Time to stress. Whereas like if you have a very full day where you are really physically putting yourself into a state of like needing rest, like I find that is like a major, and often these things coincide, right? Like the more we're consuming and stressing about things that make us anxious, the less we are physically doing, unless you're like reading scary news on the treadmill or something, in which case I'd say stop doing that. But yeah, physical exercise, I think, like I've been on basically any anxiety drug you can think of, and I personally have a lot of negative opinions about a lot of them. If things like benzos work for you, fine. I think that given the risk of physical dependency with benzos, I would be incredibly skeptical about using them for anything other than emergencies. Similarly with like intense sleeping medications, sedatives, like oftentimes the things that you will be prescribed for anxiety are like, I mean, they basically just like they tranquilize you essentially. Like these are often, not always, but often very heavy drugs that our brains are just not really equipped to deal with, especially for long-term use. So, and I have personally found over the years, like I'll never forget, I think I've said this anecdote before, but I'll say it again, I was having a complete panic attack during a really, really stressful financial moment at the company where basically we had like a couple days to find like $250,000 or we would be out of business. And I was having a total full-blown panic attack and I was home alone and I like didn't even feel like I could get to a doctor, even though now looking back, we live literally a block away from a hospital, but I don't know, it just didn't occur to me. And so I like went on one of those like online like therapist things, and it was just like some poor overworked woman on the other side was like, what's going on now? And I'm like having this panic attack, and she like immediately writes me a 60-day script for Prozac and a 30-pill script for sedatives. And at the time I was like, and I've never touched that Prozac and never will, because not that I think no one can benefit from it, but that was clearly a very contextual issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. That wasn't something that a drug could solve. That was something that money could solve, and or like just being able to regulate. I did end up taking a few of the sedatives for the next few days just to like be able to calm my nervous system. Things like beta blockers also can be very helpful in those instances. But either way, like anxiety often will not improve until the underlying issue is improved. And in cases like you said, over consuming news, like that first and foremost has to stop, because it's constantly creating this feedback loop. But secondly, for people like myself who find that even if you solve for one issue, another one will pop up because your body sort of always wants to be at that anxiety level, the only sustainable solution I've personally ever found is physical exhaustion, which we should be doing anyway.
Yes.
Not like
for sure
hurting yourself, but like you should be tired at the end of the day.
Yeah, but walking, moving your body, going to a hard workout, whatever works for you. I will also add, if it's financial anxiety specifically, and especially if you've hit your metrics, you know, you have your emergency savings, you're putting money away for retirement, like you've done all your classics, you've paid off your debt, or you have a strong debt repayment plan, and you're still finding that you're having anxiety. One, again, scarcity mentality could be part of it. There are psychological reasons. A financial therapist, which again is a real thing, could be very helpful. But also identifying where your financial anxiety triggers are. Is it about loss of income? Is it about net worth? Is it about, you know, having to support someone unexpectedly? Like, where are your triggers? And instead of doom scrolling or spiraling, what could you actually be doing to solve for them then? If it's about income loss, what can you be doing to create another stream of income for yourself? What can you be doing to ward off what some of these anxieties are? It's just a more helpful way, I think, in the similar vein of like exercising, just doing something as opposed to stewing in it.
1000%. Last question. My husband is amazing, but he was hurt that I want my own separate emergency fund. What should I say?
Ask him why he was hurt. That's question one. Like, why does that hurt your feelings? And then explain why you want a separate one and encourage him to have a separate one.
I'm always taking flack from this audience about being too hard on men, so I'll just say he sounds perfect and you shouldn't even interrogate it.
I understand, especially if you think you're in like a really copacetic relationship. If your person comes to you and says, hey, I'm just telling you that I want to have a separate bank account, and you've always banked jointly, that you could get a little taken aback by that and have an immediate reaction in the same way that people have reactions to the concept of a prenup. You know, like I'm not saying you should. I'm saying it's an understandable reaction.
I don't think it is.
A prenup? I love them. I extol their virtues left, right, and center, but I also understand people have been socialized to think that they're bad because they don't fundamentally understand what they are and that everybody has a prenup and it's the default laws of your state.
Anyway, I'll see you next week.
You don't want to finish this?
No.
Leave him. Divorce him.
No, I don't think divorce him, but I just be vigilant, because any negative reaction around a woman wanting to protect herself financially is, to me, not a red flag maybe, but a yellow flag.
Okay.
I think that anyone who pushes back against a prenup, that's a yellow flag to me. I think that not wanting someone to have their own emergency fund is a yellow flag, because again, like, all of these things are about ensuring that everyone is taken care of regardless of what happens in the relationship.
I agree, but you have to acknowledge that people have been socialized that prenups are A, only for rich people, and B, people conceive of them as a divorce contract because they've been socialized to think that way.
I guess hurt to me is just like, I don't like it. I don't like the sound of it, because it feels like putting something on her shoulders, like she should now feel bad for having asked for that.
Yeah, I think if it was like
a totally reasonable ask.
He was confused by it, or he, like, whatever.
He's on thin ice with me is all I'm saying.
Okay, fair. The slightly more male positive person on this chat. I see where you're saying it's a yellow flag. And if he continues to push back, it's a red flag, I think, for both of us, for sure. But explaining your why is really important, even if it's as simple as, because I want it and it makes me feel comfortable. Like, it doesn't need to be this long, drawn-out thing. It could be, this is important to me and it makes me feel safe and secure and I want to do this.
I know.
And then if he's like, I would like my own, you can say, okay, great. You can also have your own emergency fund. And just a reminder, No one has to bank jointly, no matter what their relationship status. And you can just always be separate.
Yeah. The older I get, the more I think couples should all have pretty separate finances, which is just a personal opinion. Not entirely. I think it's fine to have some joint finances, but I do think like if it's at all possible, the more they can have separate, the better, because I just think that like I just think about all the stories of people who can't get divorced for financial reasons. Mm-hmm. And I do think that like starting at the very beginning of the relationship, insofar as it's possible, always putting the eggs in the basket of like, if I need to leave, I can. This relationship is like an active decision each day. You know what I mean? It's not like we're stuck in it, because I think like people not being able to get divorced is something that sneaks up on people. It's something that, and it's usually a result of over combining your finances and becoming overly reliant on the two incomes to a point that it's like it would be completely disruptive. Like you simply couldn't afford to live separately. And I'm not saying that could be totally prevented by having separate finances, but you know, even something as simple as like you can't even leave in a dire situation because you can't even access that money. Like that's the kind of thing that like if it could be at all prevented, I feel like it's 2026. We've got to be stacking the odds in our favor.
Well, I think it's weird that married couples would be fully joint ever, because the idea of not having money that each person can autonomously spend is wild to me, in so much as it causes so many fights if you are nitpicking at what the other person is spending all the time. That is one of the easiest ways to take a ton of fights out of your relationship.
1,000%.
Because you're going to have different values around money. That's not even you could both make a ton of money and you still would nitpick around like, really, this thing in both directions, because you're not going to be an amorphous blob that just believes the exact same things are valuable all the time.
I spent like, including the staff, like because we hired someone to help us, like probably $2,500 to $2,800. I have to go back and look at last month's expenses, but like all that money on my New Year's Eve party, because I really wanted a big fabulous party, and like that was entirely my money from my accounts, from my job, because I was like, I'm sure Mark would have gone halvesies on it if I like really pressed him to, but like I knew that it was not as important for him, and I wanted to be able to fully enjoy the party, which I knew I could only fully enjoy if I was like, this is my money and I get to do what I want with it. Because like I think it's also not totally healthy that each purchase both people should feel equally excellent about signing off on. Do you know what I mean?
That is not realistic at all. Also, it was a fabulous party.
Thank you. It was. And it was like, yeah, and I got to enjoy it properly. Continue.
Well, I remember one of my favorite pieces of advice from someone I interviewed for my Relationship and Money book, which is my third book. They said, like, there's this idea that you always have to compromise and that everybody should have a little bit of pain when it comes to making a decision with your money. And she goes, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
Because instead of both of you hating the thing, how about one of you gets to be excited about it? So the example I think she used was a couch. If he wants to spend $1,000 on this couch and you want to spend $3,000 on this couch, what are you going to both settle on a $2,000 couch that neither of you wants? Yeah. That's stupid. Sometimes one person should get the win. Sometimes the other person gets the win. Now, there has to be a balance of not going tit for tat and all of that. It's like, well, you got it last time, so I get it this time. But understanding that, particularly if it's something financially in the relationship that you don't care quite as much about, okay, go spend the money on that thing. But especially if it's your money, that makes it a much more palatable conversation.
1,000. Oh my God. Mark and I, when we fly, he's like, put me in the cargo hold. Yeah. He's like, I don't care.
I'll be Mona, rides up in, Delta One, but, heaven forbid she were under the plane. I think it'd be like, I'll be in a kennel next door. No problem.
Oh my God. I will be on the Queen Elizabeth too, sailing across the ocean with it. No, but like, I will put myself consistently in a more comfortable seat, and I will gain my points, and I will do whatever needs to be. I will sacrifice to put myself in a more comfortable seat. If the flight's under like 3 hours, I don't care. I'll sit wherever. But like if it's a long flight, I'm like, it is worth it to me to have a better flight experience with that money. But my husband, who's like literally in steerage, like just like making conversation with the person next to him, I could never in good conscience be like, that's coming out of our joint account.
Also, it's giving, I'm too old to live an uncomfortable life.
Do you know that? I regret showing Mark that season of White Lotus because every other day he's like, I just, what is it? It's like,
isn't it? I'm too old to live an
she's
uncomfortable
like,
life.
I just am at an age where I'm meant to be uncomfortable. And I don't feel that way about all things for sure. There are certainly things that I'm totally fine with like sacrificing a bit on. Like but like that's not one of them. But like that, it is not conscientious of me to make that a mutual expense of our marriage. That is not his expense. That is my choice, and it should come from it. And it's like, it also, like, I think that having certain purchases be separate is also a very good litmus test of like, how much is it worth to you?
Yep.
Like because I know that like, if I'm going to be able to afford this, I have to do certain things, you know?
It does encourage you to also keep saving, investing, spending in alignment with what your own values are. And then again, you should still have all of this together as a couple. There should be joint savings goals, joint investment goals, an overall like joint financial plan that you as a couple have agreed on. But to have it individually as well is very motivating when it comes to your personal finances.
Yes. So all of this is to say, if someone is hurt at the idea of you having an emergency fund, I don't like that on first blush, but to Erin's point, I think only if there's further pushback should that be a real concern. But kind of more importantly, I just think that like as a paradigm shift, like it is so important to remember that the idea of all of a couple's finances being collective is a relic of a time when women did not have their own finances. Like it's not like they were like living up until the 1960s being like, it just makes more sense to bank with the man. Like, no, women couldn't have their own finances. And most women worked, even throughout most of like modern American history. Most women worked. They just didn't get to keep their money. Their money was like essentially given over to their husband, or before that happened, their father. Like, women were owned essentially financially by the male figure in their life. And like the idea that everything is collective is to a large extent a vestige of that. It was just never an option for each party to have their own finances. So I just think that it's like a total misreading of history to think that it is like in any way the more sort of, I don't know, pragmatic or neutral version of finances. No, it just comes from a time when there couldn't be two.
That, and I think generally in life, but certainly in finances, when certain trends come up and certain ways of doing things come up, you should always be asking, who does this benefit?
Totally.
That is such an important question to ask yourself.
Yes. I have a very aggressive goal with my finances this year that I've been very clear to Mark. This has nothing to do with you. This is about my finances, my money, my personal ability to, to sustain myself. And like I'm taking on more like stuff than usual this year to be able to achieve it. And I think that like if your partner, provided you're contributing to your mutual goals, provided that, all of the major decisions are collective, all of that, if your partner's not okay with that, like, I'm sorry, but that does feel like a yellow flag to me.
Oh, that's a huge flag. I think if your partner also doesn't support your ambitions and the way that you work, and if they in any way belittle it, pick fights, like that to me is a big one. If you have a big thing coming up, especially professionally, and your partner picks fights with you in the lead up, that's such a big tell that they're trying to undermine you.
One of the most common signs of covert abuse is people who pick arguments right before something important in order to ruin the moment.
Yeah.
That's hugely common. Be wary, diva, and get that emergency fund. As you know, I fully recommend at least 18 emergency funds per woman.
I thought we were at 37 at last count, but 18's fine.
All right, Erin, where should they go to learn about? Wait, but you have like speaking of 17 of something, you have so many newsletters
17 newsletters. So my main one is called Hopefully Helpful. You can find it as, I'm so sorry, brokemillennial.substack.com.
We gotta rebrand, diva.
Listen, it's a slow burn to make sure that I still own certain URLs. Again, like we said last time, if you're a branding expert, get in my DMs. I have some questions.
Yes.
But yes, it is a weekly newsletter. And then I also have Hi, My Name Isn't Mom that you can find at erinlowry.substack.com, where I talk about the identity shift that is motherhood. It is not parenting advice. It is me just exploring one woman's journey through a big life-changing event.
You know where to find me. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.